How can you independently and quickly deal with any cold? In this video you will find out why colds can linger, what you need to do to determine the cause of a prolonged cold. I will tell you about the secrets of quick cold treatment, taking into account the identified problems. At the end of the video, you will receive a bonus. I'll tell you what you can do to make sure your child doesn't get sick again in a few days. In our time, there is a real epidemic of allergic diseases, and allergic rhinitis in children is leading the way. Besides, very often, unfortunately, this diagnosis is not made and is not known about. Therefore, it's incorrect to treat a runny nose regardless of its cause. For example, the runny nose can be of viral etiology. This is the most common problem for school kids, namely, they got a virus. The nose's mucous membrane is the first to react, causing blockage and mucus discharge. But if a healthy child's immune system deals quickly with this virus and eliminates it, if a child has an allergic rhinitis, then the immunity reacts incorrectly to the virus that enters the mucous membrane. That is, the immune system works allergically to the viral antigen. On the protein molecule, the immune system reacts not in the proper way, but allergically. And this leads to the fact that the swelling of the mucous membrane becomes more than necessary to attract normal immune cells for the immune system to work, and creates more mucus. And all this, unfortunately, creates a conducive environment for the virus to stay in the mucous membrane for a long time. And it can actually be there not, as we thought before, 3 to 5 days, but entire weeks. That's why there's a vicious circle. That is, the virus's mucous membrane becomes allergized. This allergic reaction contributes to the virus being in the mucus for a long time, and one process pulls the other. Therefore, when treating, our task is to break this circle. Allergic rhinitis can be to anything, more often to dust, but there may not be a constant allergic reaction. But for each virus, a tearful hair can additionally become allergic. The next cause is problems with the pharynx, problems with the adenoids. It is especially popular among preschoolers. In the presence of partial colds, the adenoids do not have time to shrink. In them, inflammation does not have time to subside, and chronic adenoiditis is launched. And this is the focus of chronic inflammation. It disrupts the work of the local immunity and leads firstly to frequent colds, and secondly, colds are prolonged. Because of the block in the back of the throat, it interferes with the normal function of the nose, mucus begins to build up, microbial flora attaches, and the cold becomes prolonged. If a child is older than 7-8 years old, his nasal sinuses are already actively functioning, in which a prolonged inflammatory process can also develop. Also in the sinuses there might be, for example, cysts, which can press in turn on the walls and disrupt the work of the nose. Therefore, children older than 7 years with persistent rhinitis must at least periodically do an X-ray of the nasal sinuses to ensure that everything is in order in the sinuses. If a child has a pronounced curvature of the nasal septum, then over the years it begins to affect the aerodynamics. The mucous membrane gets tired in such a regime and gradually begins to swell and overgrow. This is truly a problem that can trigger persistent and frequent rhinitis. Therefore, if there is a pronounced curvature of the nasal septum, we definitely pay attention to it. In addition to everything else, even the stomach can affect the work of the nose. If a child has constant refluxes from the stomach into the esophagus, this can irritate the respiratory tract, and it can suffer, including the mucous membrane of the nose, which can chronically recede. And any viral cold can greatly intensify and prolong this swelling. Therefore, a child may get sick often and may have prolonged colds. The plan of investigation for prolonged cold logically stems from those causes we talked about today. And the first thing you should do is check the child's throat, if it's a preschooler or a student of younger school age. Usually we perform diagnostics either with the help of an endoscope or with the help of an X-ray. The endoscope, of course, is more informative because in addition to the degree of adenoid enlargement, it can show the presence or absence of an inflammatory process in the nasopharynx. The second thing you need to do is to rule out allergy, regardless of the child's age. As a rule, diagnosis is carried out either through blood tests. I usually prescribe the formula for clinical blood analysis, look at whether eosinophils are elevated or not, immunoglobulin E, total and eosinophilic, and albumin. These are biochemical blood tests. Allergists can also prescribe skin scarification tests, that is, scratches on the skin with allergens, and look at what there might be a reaction to. Allergists can also assign additional blood tests, which can either confirm or rule out the allergy. But there is a very important point in terms of exclusion here. Most often in children of a younger age, for example, at 2-3 years old, 5 years old, sometimes even at 7, allergy does not always show up in blood tests and it is not always possible to catch it. Therefore, if we see clinical signs of possible allergic rhinitis, we approach the problem as an allergy. The third thing you need to do is to exclude inflammatory changes in the nasal passages, especially if the child is over 7 or 8 years old. For this, an X-ray of the paranasal sinuses is done. In children over 10-12 years old, the work of the nose may be affected by the curvature of the nasal septum, which will divide it into 2 halves on the left and on the right. That's why in school children and older students, we necessarily look at the degree of curvature of the nasal septum if it exists. With pronounced deformation of the nasal septum, we recommend removing it to normalize the aerodynamics of the nose, so that the nose works normally and so that the colds do not drag on. Besides other factors, prolonged colds can rule out the presence of reflux, which is the backflow from the stomach into the esophagus. But I usually prescribe this last. If allergies have been ruled out, if inflammation in the throat and in the nasal sinuses has been ruled out, or if treatment has already been undertaken but this treatment is not yielding sufficient results. We always try to rule out reflux disease, that is, throwbacks from the stomach into the esophagus, which can lead to, among other things, chronic rhinitis. And if you do everything correctly, if you find the problem that sets off your chronic rhinitis, then the cold will quickly pass. Identifying problems causing chronic partial rhinitis is half the battle. You also need to know how to treat chronic rhinitis. And the first thing you should do is to rinse out viral and antibacterial antigens, that is, simply rinse the nose. The most effective way to rinse the nose for preschoolers is to use a nasal aspirator with saline solution. Please proceed after watching the video. You can return and proceed to this link. To see how to properly rinse a preschooler's nose, if the child is older than 7 years, then I recommend him to rinse his nose with the help of nasal sprays. Or you can purchase Aquamaris with a nozzle. It is a box that includes the healing solution and powders. We prepared the solution accordingly. Tilt your head down over the sink, turn it to the side, start pouring the solution into the top nostril. It will start to flow out of the bottom one. In such a manner, you can safely rinse the deep sections of the nose and nasopharynx. Such a pot for nose rinsing can usually be bought in any yoga store. We've rinsed our noses nicely, let's move on. The second thing we should do is block allergic reactions, especially if the child has a confirmed allergy. For this, we prescribe antihistamine drugs, that is, anti-allergy drops for children in a dosage according to your age. I usually prescribe antihistamines for 7 to 10 days, but only antihistamines can be insufficient. And we will definitely use our helper stick and intranasal glucocorticoids. The most popular drug among them is Nasonex, but if you are reluctant to buy Nasonex or it does not suit you for some reason, there are plenty of analogues. These include Avamys, Flexonase, Lidesrenate, etc. Many pediatricians and even many ear, nose and throat doctors are afraid of these drugs in acute respiratory viral infection because there is an outdated opinion that these drugs begin to contribute to the violation of local immunity, its decrease and the spread of viruses. However, this is far from the truth. And already by several scientific works, even many scientific works, European and Russian, it has been proven that these drugs significantly do not affect the work of local immunity, but their anti-cold and anti-inflammatory action. Their positive qualities far outweigh the insignificant effect on local immunity and ultimately allow us to cure a lingering cold much faster. There are contraindications for the use of these drugs. Therefore, if you haven't seen a doctor for a long time, be sure to go to the doctor and clarify whether you can use these kinds of preparations like Nasonex. Are there any contraindications for you? And ideally, find the dose that will be appropriate for your age and the condition of your mucous membranes. The next step is antiviral therapy. If you've just gotten sick, you have a chance to make a significant impact on the virus. For this, on the first or second day, you can give your child antiviral drugs. As a rule, these drugs, they help produce interferons or they themselves contain interferons. But it's worth knowing that they work for a day, maximum 2, so I usually prescribe antiviral drugs for no longer than 3 days. Beyond that, it's just a waste of money. If the cold has already dragged on and has been bothering you for not the first week, and those drugs that we have already talked about do not help, I usually prescribe antiviral drugs that affect even prolonged colds. For instance, interferon. This is interferon, but one that we prescribe in candles, and when it is absorbed into the blood, it actually starts working and gives a good antiviral effect. Interferon has several dosages that can be adjusted for practically any age of a child. In my practice, I like to prescribe cycloferon, which has proven effects. But these powerful antiviral drugs should be prescribed by a doctor. Let your pediatrician or ear, nose, and throat doctor determine the adequate, good dosage for you and the optimal duration of the treatment course. If a child has yellow and green discharges from the nose for several days, and these discharges do not go away with the treatments we have already discussed, then you need to seek medical attention. I usually prescribe local antibacterial medications. What's sold for the nose, there aren't many, it's Polydex or Isofra. If a child has been recently treated with them or they don't help, I use eye drops, like Tobrex, Albucid or levomycetin drops. So, we have arsenals that we can use. These are local antibiotics because systemic antibiotics we only prescribe in the most extreme cases. As a rule, if there is a complication of cold, these are the main treatment methods that we use for severe and frequent colds. If you can't cope, always consult a doctor and together with the doctor choose an adequate and good treatment. Well, now the promised bonus. What can be done to prevent the child from catching a new cold just 2 days after recovering? First of all, you should take care of the normal functioning of the immune system, especially the local immunity of the child in the upper respiratory tract. Therefore, you should take care of the moisture of the mucous membranes. Before going to preschool or school and after returning from there, moisturize his nose with ready-made preparations with isotonic seawater such as Aqualor, Aquamaris and so on. Or take normal saline, pour it into any empty nasal bottle and use it. A spray in one, a spray in the other, moisturize the nasal mucosa. Before and after preschool. Because the air in kindergartens and schools is very dry, it disrupts the work of local immunity. Secondly, what we can do is improve the evacuation of immune cells from the mucous membrane to the mucus of their penetration. For this, there are either natural remedies, for instance, aloe vera juice, which you can drop 1 drop into each nostril 2 to 3 times a day for your child over the course of 7 to 10 days. But this is on the condition that if the child has no allergies to plants, no allergies to flowering, in such a case, natural remedies can be used. You can also use a ready-made drug called Derinat. We prescribe it 1 to 2 drops in each nostril 3 times a day, or 1 to 2 sprays depending on age. This drug also helps the immune cells and antibodies. They come out in the mucus and accordingly they better protect the child from the infection that he gets in kindergarten or school. There is another important point. The child gradually accumulates the infection on the mucus lining, to put it bluntly. Therefore, if you If you are in kindergarten and you have the opportunity to take this break, Monday, Tuesday, they went, gathered the flora, took a break on Wednesday. The immune system dealt with this flora, the number of viruses and microbes on the mucous membrane decreased, negative reactions decreased, and the child coped with it and didn't get sick. So get treated properly, engage in cold prevention, and then your child will recover quickly and get sick infrequently. See you later.